Victoria Sinclair once believed her life had reached the pinnacle of happiness, a slender gold-leafed castle perched atop the rolling hills of Beverly Hills, where sunlight danced through towering glass panes, reflecting on gleaming marble floors and sumptuous velvet rugs. Every evening fete, there felt like the overture to a fairy tale. Champagne flutes fizzing beneath crystal chandeliers, symphonic music drifting softly through grand halls, and the proud footsteps of high society echoing on marble. This was Victoria's world, the world often called a winner's paradise, where money lay within easy reach, and power radiated from every gaze, every smile, every subtle gesture. All right, before you settle in, take a sec to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely vibing with what I'm putting out here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe. Her husband, Jonathan Hartwell, embodied that power and prestige. Once a prominent corporate attorney, he had transformed into one of the most sought-after investors on global trading floors. Financial reports bore his name like a deity's. Every deal he orchestrated was heralded as triumphant. To the public eye, Jonathan was a modern-day prince, capable with a mere gesture of tapping into untold fortunes, while Victoria reigned as the adored princess of that glittering realm. Every corner of their mansion had been chosen by Victoria's exacting eye. An ivory Italian leather sofa, a silent Renaissance portrait hanging on the wall, a colossal crystal chandelier imported from Venice. She would gaze at the veins of marble beneath her bare feet, imagining grand balls to be held in this very foyer, memorizing how cool and smooth the stone felt underfoot. Each detail, from fresh damask roses delivered at dawn to the private orchestra that serenaded their soirees, was arranged as meticulously as an opera director staging the crescendo of her life. When word spread through society gossip that Victoria was expecting their first child, the entire estate seemed to awaken under a new light. Amidst the opulence, she found herself quietly overwhelmed with joy. She savored the anticipation of every soft kick from the life within, imagining the warmth of Jonathan leaning in to whisper, "We're having an angel." In Victoria's mind, the world around her softened. The piano in the drawing room seemed to play triumphant love themes, and any fear of the future was swept away by an unwavering belief in complete happiness. She pictured tranquil afternoons, strolling with her husband through the meticulously trimmed rose garden. Along the pristine brick path, dappled sunlight would filter through the leaves. Victoria would slip her hand into Jonathan's arm, gently resting her head on his broad shoulder, listening to the rustle of foliage and the steady warmth of his breath. She believed that in such moments, every worldly worry would dissolve, leaving only a profound sense of peace. That same celebratory spirit extended into the nursery she had decorated in soft pastels, a cream-colored crib dotted with tiny floral motifs, diaphanous voile curtains that caught the morning light, and a white wooden bookshelf lined with fairy tales of 1,000 stars. Victoria envisioned a tiny hand clutching her finger when their child first awoke, followed by a playful smile as he explored plush pillows and pristine teddy bears. The very thought of her family's haven felt so vivid that she could almost taste the sweetness of that first drop of colostrum on her lips. Deep within her, the desire for a complete, flourishing family grew like a living watercolor. She believed that when Jonathan entered the nursery with loving eyes and cradled her belly, promising, "I will be the best father," all the petty conflicts of daily life would vanish, leaving only genuine, protective love. Victoria had long thought that faith and devotion could withstand any trial. Beneath the dazzling veneer of wealth, she was certain her life stood as a living testament to a modern fairy tale, where warmth could be found in the grandest of facades. There were moments, amidst those gold-leafed walls and the sweet laughter of society, that she felt more genuinely happy than ever. And in that instant, she was convinced nothing could shatter her dream. A dream of love, of prosperity, and of a perfect home. Brushing her fingers across the delicate paper rose on her vanity, She smiled serenely, unaware that even in this most splendid moment, hidden fissures were forming, poised to crack wide open at the worst possible time. In the resplendent halls of the mansion, where every gesture and glance was meticulously choreographed for grand soirees, Victoria Sinclair suddenly realized she had been living in a perfect play, at least until the fateful moment. That afternoon, she slipped quietly into her private study on the second floor. Candlelight from crystal sconces danced across the ebony desk, while a row of bookshelves held the world's greatest classics. She gently swept a velvet curtain aside, her gaze drifting over the endless rose garden below, where blossoms had just opened under the sun. Everything lay in an uncanny stillness, save for the steady tick of an antique clock, reminding her that each opulent second was slipping away. Nothing in that glittering veneer warned her that beneath lay a storm waiting to break. As the sun dipped through the great bay window, its final rays pierced the drapes in slender shafts of light, illuminating a pristine white envelope on her desk, not from the law firm or a lavish gift, but bearing the words, Boston Private Obstetrics Clinic. Victoria froze, curiosity mingling with unease. Mail from Boston? Why not sent to their New York estate or Jonathan's Manhattan office? Her hand trembled as she set the envelope down. Her dry lips felt as if she'd bitten into a bitter fruit. She reached for it, peeling back the edge with a soft tear, the paper ripping as sharply as a knife across the hush. In that instant, her breath caught, her heart constricted. Unfurling the letter, her eyes locked onto the first name, Sophia Reynolds. A woman she'd never heard of, a girl on the opposite coast undergoing prenatal screening. The due date was only weeks apart from her own. Victoria read on, her gaze fixed on the line, Father of the fetus, J. Hartwell. Each word felt like a blade carving into her chest. Victoria could sense her pulse galloping, a warm flush creeping over her cheeks, her skin suddenly taut and fragile. She stared at the white paper, while memories of lavish evenings, her husband's tender touches, and whispered promises of a bright future dissolved into nothingness. The last light of day faded, leaving a somber gloom to wrap around the study. She stifled a ragged breath, but tears fell anyway. In a flood of recollection, Victoria saw herself and Jonathan standing amid a glittering gala, fingers intertwined, beaming at the cameras. She had believed in that smile, trusted his vow to remain by her side. Now that very smile seemed cold and detached, indifferent to the hopes she held so close. All she'd painstakingly built, her independence, her reputation, their love, had collapsed into emptiness, like a sand castle washed away by the tide. She drew the letter free of its envelope, laying it flat on the desk despite her blurred vision. Deliberately, she read each line. The test results, the patient ID, the itemized medical fees. Every clinical detail underscored the hospital's professionalism, yet stood as undeniable proof of his betrayal. Sophia Reynolds, the name haunted her, evoking secrets and hidden infidelities. She wondered, while she'd been busy adorning the nursery for their anticipated child, believing they were starting anew, had Sophia been slipping into that clinic, signing forms, carrying another life? The study seemed to shrink around her as her heart thundered in her ears. Victoria pressed a hand to her chest, struggling to stay upright. Her knees weakened, threatening to buckle. 1,000 questions surged. Why Sophia? Why now? What had driven her husband to this betrayal, turning their unborn child into evidence of deception? Anger and anguish tangled within her. In that pivotal instant, Victoria realized she was no longer the confident, proud hostess of those dazzling balls. She was simply a mother-to-be, her faith shattered. She rose and moved slowly to the window, staring out at the rose bushes steeped in twilight's glow. Every petal, every cup of tea she'd savored, every laugh Jonathan had shared with her, all felt utterly alien. She whispered to herself that perhaps, from this moment on, nothing could mend her fractured heart. Yet the envelope and its letter lay on the desk like a verdict. Her marriage, once assumed unbreakable, now riddled with cracks. Victoria exhaled sharply, her fingers trembling as she slipped the letter into her coat pocket, carrying it like a token of harsh reality. She turned away, cast one last look at the serene facade outside, then softly closed the office door, her departure marking a life divided forever between happiness and despair. From that moment forward, her journey to reclaim herself and seek answers to every lie began. In the hushed atmosphere of the mansion, bathed in the glow of amber light, Victoria Sinclair sat curled up on a velvet armchair. The flickering candle on her desk cast her silhouette upon the bare wall. Deep into the night, after the laughter and clinking glasses of the grand gala had faded away, she was alone once more with the silent antique typewriter. The candle burned low, its heavy wax scent mingling with the air, as though heralding the storm of emotion about to break. Beside it sat the pristine white envelope, its surface still imprinted with fingerprints, holding the fragile pages that awaited their final words. Victoria sighed quietly, her hand trembling as it hovered over the keys. Each letter she struck carried the weight of her anguish and despair. It was as if every word could bind her bleeding heart in chains. She did not pour forth curses at wealth, nor condemn power or prestige, the very treasures she had once cherished. Instead, she infused every line with pain and betrayal, the agony of a husband's rejection of her heart, right in the midst of her dream of motherhood, the cruel affair that replaced the tenderness and loyalty she had expected. By the wavering candlelight, Victoria released her grip on the pen, letting it glide across the paper in solemn silence. The ink etched memories of shattered trust and promises of love now dispersed like thin wisps of smoke. When the letter was complete, she stared helplessly at the tear-stained page. A fleeting relief washed over her, quickly replaced by an unending void, as fathomless as a bottomless pit. She vowed she would not look back. She would leave all memories of her guilt-ridden past behind. Without waiting for the ink to dry, she folded the page, poured every ounce of her grievance into the envelope, and sealed it with a bitter smile. Rising, Victoria opened her wardrobe, not to select a gown for the next ball, but to pack a few simple outfits. She left behind the luxurious silks, choosing instead dark, easy-care garments that would offer comfort on her journey of self-rediscovery. She tucked her passport, a modest sum of cash, and a small pack of prenatal vitamins into a tiny satchel. A crushing sense of fragmentation filled her chest as she zipped the bag shut. Each click reminded her that her life was turning to a wholly different chapter. She brushed her hand across the handkerchief she carried, the same one she had used to wipe her tears upon learning of her husband's infidelity, and offered herself a small, resolute smile. This was not an act of cowardice, but the stride of a woman determined to salvage her remaining dignity. Every step down the opulent hallway, past Renaissance paintings and bronze statues that seemed to watch her with curious eyes, brought her closer to the unknown. Victoria did not glance back. She allowed the muted light and the solitary echo of her heels on the hardwood floor to guide her away. The heavy wooden door closed behind her with a thunderous thud in the stillness, sealing shut a tragic chapter in her life and opening another, one of solitude and rebirth. In less than a minute, she stood beside the sleek black SUV waiting outside. Darkness in the mansion's corridor seemed to wrap around her like a cold shawl. The faithful staff member, once devoted to dusting every corner of the home, bowed his head in silent witness, voiceless. His eyes followed her movements, yet Victoria had severed every tie, ready to step into the night of her soul. The engine rumbled to life, headlights sliced through the thin mist, sketching fleeting beams of light across the dark. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of the leather interior envelop her, as though it were a final comfort before embarking on her lone odyssey. She inhaled deeply the damp midnight scent of the city, then flicked on the air conditioner to dispel the suffocating heaviness in her chest. On the road that led away from the mansion, Victoria watched the neon billboards of Los Angeles fade into the rearview mirror. With each mile she left the glittering metropolis further behind, she distanced herself from the woman who had lived in gilded facades. She did not look back. She knew that what lingered in Jonathan's face, in that letter, would burden her if she hesitated. The SUV glided down winding country roads, rain pattering softly on the windshield in a melancholy yet comforting rhythm. Victoria followed the stretch of lonely streetlights, the sky above blanketed by brooding clouds. She thought of Mukilteo, the coastal town in the Pacific Northwest she had chosen as her refuge, where the whisper of waves, the storybook lighthouse, and the deserted pier would bear witness to her confrontation with grief and her protection of the little life within her. As the vehicle veered off the main highway, the last tendrils of her fear ebbed away. She gripped the steering wheel as though clutching her destiny. The darkness could not imprison her steps, nor could the fog obscure her resolve. Though her heart carried fresh wounds, it still beat with unwavering hope that beyond the mist and trials, a promise awaited her embrace. And so, under the cold cloak of night, the SUV carrying Victoria Sinclair raced toward the ocean's edge, leaving behind all glory and deception, opening the journey to rediscover her truest self. As the SUV glided past the Mukilteo Pier, Victoria Sinclair stepped into Mrs. Martha Young's little cottage, enveloped by a silvery mist that shrouded the entire harbor. The wooden cabin sat quietly behind a row of wind-tossed pines, its tin roof weathered smooth by countless drizzles. The door closed behind her with a soft creak, as if stirring the lonely spirits that once dwelled here. Inside, a single room offered simple furnishings, a modest table and chairs, a bed made up in pristine white linens, and a lone window framing the vast expanse of the sea. Victoria set down her few belongings and paused, quietly taking in the unfamiliar refuge she had chosen. Outside, heavy raindrops pounded the tin roof in a mournful symphony. The sea breeze slipped through the window crack, billowing the thin curtains and carrying a sharp, salty chill. In that moment, Victoria's heart harked back to the gold-leafed mansion in Beverly Hills as though it were a distant dream. Each crashing wave whispered of the betrayal that had stolen her peace. She moved to the wooden desk by the window, where a soft leather journal, purchased in Capri back when she was a new bride, lay waiting. She turned its yellowed pages, memories of passionate days mingling with the relentless waves of morning sickness. Victoria lowered herself into the chair, its wood groaning beneath her weight. A gentle nausea crept into her limbs, and she lifted her head, drawing a deep, steadying breath. The journal opened itself like a faithful confidant, silently recording her hopes, ink-stained letters still tasting faintly of the Mediterranean Sea, and Jonathan's whispered promise. Our child will be the testament to our eternal love. The illusions of happiness shattered the moment her pen touched paper. The first line read, "Rain, wind, cold," before turning to the longing for candle-lit evenings by the parlor hearth and the crystalline chimes at glittering receptions. One by one she continued, "Today my heart feels weighed down by every bout of nausea, burdened by a vast loneliness." Each word dripped with sorrow, yet held a fierce determination. She must live, not only for herself, but for the little being growing inside her. She refused to collapse into despair. Victoria vowed to wake each morning to the soft knock of the teapot, to brew herself a cup of warm licorice tea, the only solace for her persistent nausea. She called Dr. Emily Grant, the kind-eyed obstetrician with salt and pepper hair who had become her rock. In their first meeting, Emily had gently laid a hand on Victoria's shoulder and whispered, "You are not alone. Step by step, we will journey through this together." Buoyed by that encouragement, Victoria kept every prenatal appointment, even though each trip from the cottage felt like the sea wind reminded her of her own smallness in the vast world. Yet with every steady heartbeat she heard through the stethoscope, her spirit found new strength. She began gentle prenatal yoga by the beach, listening to the waves and inhaling the salty air, treating it as a balm for her wounded soul. Above all, Victoria understood she needed psychological support. Carmen Delgado, a specialist in perinatal trauma, helped her separate pain from duty. In each therapy session, Victoria confronted her anger, the betrayal that had stolen her trust, and slowly unearthed hope from the fractured shards of emotion. Carmen would ask softly, "How strong do you feel after each episode of panic?" And with every answer, Victoria rediscovered an inner resilience she thought lost. Day after day, rain or shine, ailments or exhaustion, Victoria refused to sink into the darkness. She let each tear fall as rain to cleanse her pain. Each afternoon she walked the shore, letting the surf lap at her ankles, a living proof that life moves on despite every trial. On the sand, she wrote, "I will not let the past define my future." In that humble cottage, Victoria realized that motherhood was not merely pastel flowers and soft light, but a courageous fight for life itself. Each dawn found her cradling her belly through the rain's gentle patter, feeling the precious life within her smile. That hope alone carried her through loneliness and emotional scars. She believed that at the journey's end, she would face not darkness, but a radiant sunrise, the immortal light of a mother's love. And so, amid the misty shores of Mukilteo, Victoria Sinclair rediscovered herself, not as the lady of a lavish estate, but as a steadfast mother, ready to wage war for two lives, her own and the innocent child soon to be born. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below, letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. Amidst Victoria's battle with relentless nausea and the crushing loneliness of that windswept coastal retreat, Jonathan Hartwell found himself plunged into an equally chaotic world. For the first time in his life, he admitted to himself that he had been far too confident in every conceivable scenario, that she would have turned to the Sinclair family estate in Massachusetts, or at the very least left a breadcrumb trail for him to follow. He phoned his assistant, his voice urgent and laced with worry. "She's not there. I can't reach her." The sharp beep of the line cut through the frenzied beating in his chest. In an instant, Jonathan felt dizzy as the truth dawned. It was not a leisurely trip home to decompress. He rifled through his calendar, scanning every booked flight and Victoria's jam-packed schedule, wondering what that void really meant. Every date, every notation on the page, felt meaningless against the vast emptiness she had left behind. His pride lay wounded, for he had believed in an unassailable marriage. He could hardly bear to imagine her enduring nights of nausea compounded by the sting of betrayal. Driven by a primal fear of loss, Jonathan made a decisive choice. He could wait no longer. In his panic, he turned to a figure trusted by the elite, Michael Parker, a private investigator renowned for his meticulous, transparent methods. Jonathan envisioned Michael as a silent warrior, hunting truth through a sea of obscured information. He fired off a brief email, just a few lines, attaching Victoria's photograph and the farewell letter she had left, then waited in silence, his heart hammering. Not even an hour passed before Michael replied. His tone was composed yet resolute, as if verifying the faintest trace. "Mr. Hartwell, I've received your materials. Your wife flew from Boston to Seattle yesterday. She purchased a round-trip ticket with Mrs. Sinclair's credit card. Next, I traced a hotel transaction in the Mukilteo area." Each word on the screen jolted Jonathan from his fog. She hadn't gone far, but she didn't want to be found. Every detail Michael uncovered struck at the core of the very pride Jonathan once flaunted. Michael Parker did more than analyze data. He quietly collaborated with banking officials to review transactions, then visited Boston's Citibank branches to confirm Victoria's signature. Meanwhile, he interviewed hotel staff, only recalling a slender woman with distant eyes who checked out before dawn. Michael called several car rental venues, tracked license plate numbers, and methodically closed in. Boston to Seattle, tracing Puget Sound's shoreline, until he confirmed Victoria was safely tucked away in a seaside cottage. When Jonathan received this news, he stood motionless at his office window, gazing out at the skyscraper disappearing into the mist of the financial district. The confident smile he once wore had frozen on his face, replaced by a bitter blend of shame and regret. Victoria was safe, but she did not want to see him. He asked Michael, voice strained, "Is she all right?" Michael responded, "Physically, yes. She's pregnant and has no dangerous complications. Mentally, she needs time." Those words poured salt into Jonathan's wounded heart. Pride, which had been his hallmark, transformed in that moment into a crushing weight. He told Michael, his voice quivering, "Tell her I'll do anything to make amends. Money, reputation, power, whatever it takes for just one chance to speak with her." Michael simply noted it silently, offering no further assurances. He understood that only Jonathan himself could begin to heal the wounds he'd inflicted. Finally, Jonathan exhaled and closed his eyes, picturing Victoria's silhouette against the wind and drizzle. He remembered the night they strolled the pier beneath fireworks, and the hopeful gleam in her eyes when she whispered, "You'll never leave me, right?" Sweet memories and profound pain mingled within him, compelling him to realize that to reclaim her love, he must shed the facade of a powerful millionaire and confront the betrayal he had wrought with genuine humility. In the hush, Jonathan whispered to himself, "I will change. I will prove I deserve her trust." Despite battered pride and mounting remorse, he clung to the hope of redemption. Returning to his desk, he gazed at a photograph of Victoria smiling in the sunset, then dialed Michael. "Let me know when she's ready." In that instant, Jonathan resolved to continue his path of atonement, no matter how treacherous the road ahead might be. Just weeks after setting foot in Mukilteo, Victoria Sinclair began to realize that not every dream unfolds as gently as the dawn light on the shore. One wintry morning, as rain tapped silently against the cottage living room window, she awoke with a strange dizziness. Her hand trembled as she raised a cup of ginger tea to her lips. Its warmth was not enough to steady her breath. Her bright eyes clouded over, and she felt her heart pound so fiercely it seemed poised to burst from her chest. Victoria rose slowly into the hallway, pressing her hand against the doorframe, swallowing hard to quell the dry lump in her throat. Each step felt leaden as she wondered whether her body, not her spirit, was betraying the steadfast resolve she had vowed to the tiny life growing within. Her face went pallid when she caught her reflection in a small wall mirror. Sallow skin, chapped lips, and eyes alight with anxiety. Nausea overtook her, and she bent forward to vomit onto the cold wooden floorboards. All the gentle memories of those serene prenatal days by the ocean felt suddenly distant, as though they belonged to someone else. Without hesitation, Victoria dialed Dr. Emily Grant. The telephone rang once, then Dr. Grant's reassuring voice whispered urgently, "Come straight to the hospital. I'll wait for you." Before Victoria could gather anything more, the wind shrieked through the window, raindrops tapping like tears about to fall. She summoned an ambulance in silence, her knuckles rapping the armrest, her heartbeat racing. With every ripple on the road, she felt her limbs tremble as though they might give way entirely. In the emergency room, the harsh glare of white lights cast her face in unforgiving relief. Nurses measured her blood pressure and saw it soar to dangerous heights. Her blood thinned, Her mind spun, and her vision blurred over the numerical readouts on the monitor. The machine's steady beeps merged with the rushed footsteps of medical staff into a chaotic symphony. Victoria forced herself to lift her head when a doctor leaned in and said quietly, "Preeclampsia. We need to operate now." His words landed like a boulder upon her chest, each breath laced with fear's fierce heat. As the medical team prepared, Michael Parker, Jonathan's private investigator, appeared at the ER entrance. He bent to exchange a few words with a nurse, then tapped out a message on his phone. "Mr. Hartwell, she's critical. Must deliver immediately." Michael's calm voice crackled through to Jonathan like thunder in a midnight sky. "She's in danger. Surgery is urgent." Jonathan's heart seized, every vein seeming to freeze. He placed the phone down, his hands shaking, tears brimming in his eyes. Without another moment's delay, Jonathan sped to his private airstrip and boarded the business jet in record time. The engines roared, lifting him into the night sky, slicing through dark clouds and dense fog. In the hushed cabin, Jonathan rested his head against the seatback, listening to the wind's hiss against the fuselage, his mind swirling with if-onlys. If only he'd been there more. If only he'd noticed the betrayal sooner. If only he'd kept his promise to put her first. All through that overnight flight, Jonathan watched the city lights wane beneath a blanket of black clouds. A hollow ache and remorse clenched his heart. He wondered if he would arrive in time to save his child's life, to beg forgiveness, to make amends. Above all, he vowed to grasp Victoria's hand and show her. This time he would stay, no matter how fierce the storm. When the jet touched down at the small Mukilteo airfield, Jonathan swapped his tailor-made suit for a thick overcoat and rushed into the waiting ambulance. He pressed close to the window, watching as Dr. Emily Grant led the surgical team, his silent prayer stirring with each passing second. He pictured Victoria's fragile smile, curled in that ER bed, utterly powerless. Finally, he arrived at the operating suite. The surgical lights glowed stark white, the sterile air tingling with urgency. Jonathan stood at the glass partition, his knuckles white as he gripped the rail, his breath quick and uneven. He heard the hurried footsteps approach, and then the faint, tentative wail of a newborn. In that cry, cut through chaos, he found a shard of hope. His son Mason had entered the world. Jonathan broke down, his sobs echoing through the hospital corridor. Those long-delayed tears washed away every ounce of pride and resentment lodged in his chest. The cold glare of surgical lighting could not extinguish the moment he became a father for the first time. Amid the dissonant beeps and solemn footsteps, he whispered, "Mason, I'm sorry I let you wait in the dark. I'll never let you or your mother be alone again." Behind the OR door, Victoria lay in recovery, exhausted but at peace. Each pain of her emergency C-section coursed through her body, yet in her mind rang the echo of her son's cry, proof that love could outshine every shadow of despair. She knew that, even if her life had hung by a thread, maternal instinct had given her the strength to endure. And when Jonathan finally entered the NICU, placing a trembling hand on Mason's incubator, he realized, though their marriage once splintered and Victoria's spirit had known profound loneliness, their shared love for this fragile child, and Jonathan's genuine remorse, had restored them, amid life's most delicate and poignant hour. Just weeks after Victoria Sinclair's health finally stabilized, following days of battling preeclampsia and an emergency preterm delivery, a gentle current of hope began to flow through her spirit. That first night, she did not lie awake in the lonely seaside cottage. Instead, she slept without dreams, without pillows of worry, cradled only by the soft warmth of Mason's breath. When morning came, she awoke to the day's very first event, the baby monitor's chime announcing her son's awakening. She mustered a tired yet tender smile, sat up, and gently drew the blanket aside so that Mason would see his mother beside him. At the very same moment, Jonathan Hartwell, her husband, who had once believed he had lost everything, quietly entered the NICU's low-intensity care room. He bent over to gaze at Mason curled inside an incubator, his skin flush beneath a thin diaper. In the hospital's soft lighting, Jonathan placed a trembling hand on the glass and whispered to his son, "Daddy is here, my love." That small whisper, fragile yet resolute, became a pledge. He would never leave again. This newfound devotion struck Victoria's heart, and she realized that although her wounds still ached, their shared parental love was already weaving them back together. That night, when Jonathan brought Mason home to the rented apartment near the hospital, he moved about awkwardly, like any new father trying his best. The tiny kitchen became a changing station beside the dining table, bathed in warm yellow light. Mason's protest echoed in his tiny throat, just as distant sirens wailed outside. Jonathan learned to soothe skin to skin, placing Mason against his bare chest, gently patting to lull him back to sleep. The faint scent of breast milk lingered on Victoria's lips as she watched her husband nod to invite her help. Together, they shared each precious moment as Mason quieted. The love they poured into their son became an unwavering candle flame, flickering with hope through the darkest hours. Victoria's delighted giggle echoed when Mason rolled over for the first time in his crib, eager to explore his new world. She cooed softly, her eyes bright with tender affection. She had once feared that Jonathan was a distant spouse, consumed by career and status. But now he sat beside her, spoon in hand, carefully blending fruit puree into baby cereal before feeding their son. Victoria recorded these tiny triumphs. Mason's fragile cries, his first babbling syllables, on videos she sent to Dr. Emily Grant. Each milestone a testament to their shared joy. Every frame steeped in tearful happiness. Guided patiently by the NICU nurses, Jonathan honed his caregiving skills. He learned secure swaddling positions, precise diaper changes, gentle cleansing after bouts of spit-up, and most importantly, to interpret Mason's needs through subtle cues. Each time Mason fussed, Jonathan would lean close, attuned to his breathing and vital signs, responding instantly to comfort him. That silent devotion, born of vulnerability and profound love, moved Victoria deeply. She understood that sometimes the most powerful proof of love is its quiet sacrifice. But life did not only offer these glowing moments. Just when Victoria believed all past rifts had healed, a new challenge emerged. Sophia Reynolds, Jonathan's secret lover, also gave birth to a daughter, Olivia, and suffered serious complications. Victoria learned this through a discreet call from private investigator Michael Parker. "Ms. Reynolds requires specialized care. Mr. Hartwell has asked you to continue your support." Startled by the familiar name, Victoria felt her heart constrict. Anger flared for an instant before her maternal instinct quelled it. In that instant of reflex, Victoria looked at her own son sleeping on her chest and imagined the fear and pain Sophia must endure. Though fragments of her own heartbreak still lingered, she recognized that motherly love does not discriminate. She carefully set Mason down and gently stroked Jonathan's hair as he sat beside her. "Please help her. This is the right thing to do." Her voice was husky, her eyes resolute. Compassion welled within her as she reminded herself that true maturity often means putting humanity above hatred. Jonathan fell silent at her request, his heart partially unburdened of guilt. He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. "Thank you." Though a single word, it conveyed 1,000 apologies and a steadfast vow to make amends. Sophia was transferred to a pediatric specialty hospital, receiving comprehensive financial and medical support at Victoria's recommendation. This journey of care was not only a father's duty to Sophia's child, but Marcus Hartwell's first steps along the path of redemption. Listeners drawn into this tale cannot help but be moved by Victoria's unwavering compassion. Even amid an emotional storm that once shattered her world, she found the courage to extend her arms to the one who betrayed her. This stands as proof that maternal love and the boundless kindness of a woman's heart outshine any animosity, transforming wrongdoing into a beacon of hope. Amid the turbulent days that followed the storm, Victoria Sinclair and Jonathan Hartwell finally brought Mason home to the small haven they had chosen as their temporary peace. It was not the gilded mansion with its glittering crystal chandeliers, but a modest apartment in Greenwich, nestled beneath the sweeping branches of a leaning maple. The road before their door led to a humble elementary school, where the laughter of children echoed each morning. White picket fences lined the path, interspersed with red brick walkways that lent a warm, familiar air. They abandoned power and opulence to embrace simplicity, a choice they had never imagined easy, yet one that, in each of their hearts, had become the symbol of a fresh start. Jonathan spent most of his time escorting Victoria to her marriage counseling sessions. The little therapy room, bathed in soft golden light, was adorned with a few abstract paintings, creating a safe space for her to lay bare every wound. Each time she voiced a fear or revisited a past scar, her eyes glistened with tears, yet shone with resolve. He listened without interruption, offering no hurried rebuttals or excuses. Every nod, every gentle reassurance warmed her spirit. Those sessions were like healing melodies, guiding them through the shifting passages between hurt and forgiveness. Meanwhile, each night after Mason drifted to sleep, Victoria would sit at the small desk beside her bedroom window. The room was illuminated by moonlight, and the trees outside whispered in the breeze. She opened her journal, a steadfast companion through countless long nights, and recorded the journey that had been painful, yet invaluable. Her cursive loops in indigo ink distilled every drop of blood and every labored breath from her past. She wrote, "The day Mason crawled. The day Jonathan held Mason for the first time. The day I asked you to honor your friendship with Sophia out of fatherly duty." Each page stood as testament to her inner strength, proof that a woman once broken could still approach happiness again, guided solely by her own heart. One late afternoon, as the sunset bathed the room in honeyed light, Jonathan announced that he had found a buyer for their Beverly Hills estate. Her heart stilled for a moment as memories of that shattered paradise surged back. But then, sharing a look of mutual understanding, they exchanged unspoken farewells. Farewells not laden with sorrow, but brimming with hope. Together, they welcomed the buyer, handed over the final keys, and formally closed the glittering chapter of their lives. Their new home was arranged in cozy pastel hues for Mason's nursery, a cream-colored crib, mint green curtains, and walls adorned with whimsical animal prints. On a small bookshelf, alongside children's books, they displayed a few newborn photographs of Olivia, Sophia's daughter, captured just after her birth. The portrait of Sophie, chosen by Victoria, hung prominently as a reminder of compassion and responsibility, despite the tangled history. Whenever Victoria glanced at that painting, she silently affirmed, "We are doing the right thing." Though life was far from perfect, each day brought its minor challenges. Mason's cries pierced the night as his first tooth emerged, triggering fevered moments, and Victoria's sleepless nights of feeding recalled the long hours in the emergency ward. Yet even amid exhaustion, love remained a comforting ember. Under the gentle lamp glow, Jonathan often sat by the crib, running his fingers through his son's hair and whispering a soft lullaby. Victoria closed her eyes, listening to Mason's steady breathing, and feeling Jonathan's hand lightly rest on her shoulder, a simple touch that held a world of trust. Before drifting off to sleep herself, Victoria would rise and place a small book at her bedside. She would quickly jot down a final journal entry, the moment she roused Mason with a bright smile, or when Jonathan guided their son's first tentative steps. These small acts reminded her that love is more than a promise. It is a steadfast presence. It was why she dared to open her heart for a second chance. and why she had found her own peace. On the morning Mason sprouted his first baby tooth, the little family awoke earlier than usual. Victoria carried her son down the hallway to greet the dawn through the broad picture window. Outside, a rosebush, Jonathan's gift to commemorate Mason's birth, peeked through the backyard. Its pink petals trembled in the breeze, reaching for the golden light. Victoria gently set Mason down, allowing him to touch the blossom. His tiny laughter rang out like the first melody of spring. In that instant, Jonathan watched Victoria from across the room, his eyes full of pride and regret. Their path had once been strewn with peril, but now they walked together toward a bright horizon, hearts mended piece by piece, trust rebuilt through small daily gestures, a whispered apology when Mason fussed at night, a tender smile as Victoria watched him sleep, a reassuring handhold before bedtime, promising no one would ever be alone again. From tears of anguish to the dawn of hope, their story proves that in a world of millionaires, where money can buy nearly anything, love and loyalty remain the priceless forces capable of healing even the deepest fractures. And when Mason grows up to see his parents holding hands on their threshold, he will learn the true meaning of family. Not diamonds or crystal, but hearts that bleed for one another and willingly mend each other's wounds every single day. And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below, letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe.